Hello, and welcome to GRYMTTRS, a podcast that talks about the connections between creativity and health and well-being. We will talk with artists, musicians, industry professionals, and some other interesting folk who like to cross the boundaries. So, let's get into it. Hello, Richard. Welcome to the GRYMTTRS podcast, and we're here today at the LCC Typo Cafe. And we're going to be talking about Applied Imagination, which is the course that you lead at Central St Martin's.
That's right,
yes.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And what would you like to know about it? You're actually a graduate of the course, an
I
alumnus, so
am.
you know loads about it already.
I
so
do.
You can ask very penetrating questions.
Well, when I was drawn to the course, because it was very broad. So I think it would be nice for the listeners to know more about the course, because there are many people within UAL and outside also that have no idea that the course exists. So,
Which is why we're here.
So, I mean, in the broad aspect, could you give us an overview?
Well, the simplest way of describing the course is that a student comes on the course, and in the first unit of the course they come up with a creative idea that has traction or needs to be realised in the real world, and then in units 2 and 3 they do it. That's the broad element, because we don't censure or control, except if they're illegal or dangerous, the subject matter of students' projects. However, once you actually engage in a project, of course it becomes very specific, and the course from your point of view becomes about your project, what you're doing, which hopefully will be something that is developing your own creative and professional identity into the next step beyond being a student. So take you, for example, your project on the course was about...
Well, my project on the course actually had elements of neurodiversity, cognitive science, health and well-being, social design, and I do find that the person can really build their project themselves.
What was your research question, the actual research question?
It was around how can curation improve the health and well-being of practicing students or something, or practicing creatives along those lines. Really looking at the journey and the exploration of the curation process and how it can be a form of psychotherapy for creatives.
And that work and the content of that work you did has carried you into the role that you're now playing at UAL, was built naturally from the interest and the knowledge and the expertise that you accumulated when you were doing that project. That's how it should be.
It's layered. It's very interesting because we unpick things in the course, you know. The box of uncertainties is one of the projects I do recall, and that was quite a pivotal point because it really helps you and guides you into looking inwardly. So then you unpick things through that process, and through that unpicking I found that you are able to really access areas of exploration that you hadn't actually thought were so prominent in your own passion for a career.
Exactly. Let's look at it in terms of the normal and accepted model of higher education, BA or MA, that most people have and wired into their heads.
Right.
So deeply wired they perhaps don't even realise it's a model. And in that model there's always something called the curriculum, which is this almost random body of approved knowledge which makes up the subject that they're studying, whether it's graphics or whether it's product design or whether it's art. And we can argue about those bodies of knowledge. We can talk about decolonising those curriculums, making them less sexist or Eurocentric. But the idea still underpins that approach, that you're going to learn a certain body of knowledge, and at the end of doing that, we're going to give you the reward of a degree that says that you've done very well in terms of absorbing this knowledge and indeed some of the processes and methodologies that go with it. And we give you a badge that says you're a very clever and creative person. And then you go out and you try to find your place in the outside world. And that model, if I sound a bit cynical about it, forgive me because I am a little bit. that's a very accepted model, and people tinker with it and they complain about it, but the basic concept of that model is very persistent.
Yeah.
Now let's think about a different model, where we don't start from that point, where we say every student is on a journey where ultimately they want to find their place, if they're at an art school,
Yeah.
in the creative world, either in the management of creativity, the facilitation of it,
Yeah.
or the execution of it themselves. So let's create a different kind of journey where we invite those students to think about what they want to do, not on their student journey necessarily, but later on in their life, what skills, what knowledge would they like to gain, and then we invite them to work with us to develop a curriculum around what they want to
Yeah.
do that leads to the qualification, the masters,
Yeah.
but makes the journey to get that qualification one in which they gain several things that you don't necessarily gain from a set curriculum. One is a body of knowledge that is directly, explicitly, curatedly, if you like, relevant to the career they want to have.
Absolutely.
To go with that, a body of methodologies and approaches
Yeah.
that fit that area because they're learned or developed for that kind of research. And thirdly, perhaps most importantly of all, a network of contacts, professional contacts, their own contacts, that come out of their research with external gatekeepers, stakeholders, external bodies, which don't evaporate the moment they graduate. They in fact become the nucleus of that person's
Absolutely.
professional contact list. And here's a thought.
Yeah.
I don't insist on this, but it's an interesting thought. You might say that we invite the students to develop their network of professional connections in order to address and answer the research question they ask.
Yeah.
But you could turn that upside down if you wanted to and say, actually, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe we invite the students to create a research question in order to motivate them to create a network of contacts that they'll take away at the end of the course.
It's funny actually, because when we were last with the students a few weeks ago, I'd come into to an evening and spoke with the current cohort, and I sat with the table and I had said, you know, had a realization as I was there that this question, while I was studying, had seemed like the be all and end all, and that's the question I must solve by the end of this course. And it's not. I realized that I had to tell them that, because I was there where they were, thinking that this needs to be solved by the time I complete the MA, and that's not the case. That is only a starting point. You get to that period of the course and you are unfolding and inviting all of these new stakeholders, and you're encouraged to do it and make those organic relationships, and they do stay with you, and you have the experiences of introducing them to your interventions and so on and so forth. But that's great because it's real life experience. It's not a model, it's not draft, it's there, and you get to expand and develop that how you wish, depending on how you then want to continue unfolding your own exploration once the course is finished, because that question still continues to change.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a meaningful question, if
Yeah.
it's a remotely serious question about the real world,
Yes.
you're not going to quote unquote solve it
No.
in 7 or 8 months.
No.
But you're going to learn an awful lot about
Yeah.
yourself and the question, and about things you might go on doing about that
Yeah.
question, or a more iterated version of it
Absolutely.
for the rest of your life
Yeah.
potentially. And isn't that what learning should be?
Absolutely. I definitely would agree with that. So if people were interested in applying for the course, then are there any kind of specific things apart from a BA or a BSc that you might say that they might need?
That's a really good question. Yeah. Well, first of all, remember everybody, it's a course that's delivered in 2 modes. We have a full-time mode that lasts a year, starting in January, finishing in December, and we have a part-time mode, which is a 2-year course, starting January and finishing in December of the following year. And the part-time mode is specifically set up to be accessible to people who are working full-time. The contact hours are all outside normal working day. So having laid that down, yes, a degree in a relevant subject, first degree, is a requirement unless you have 10 years work-based equivalent to put on your application form. But we take a very wide view of what a relevant subject might be. I'm very interested, apart from the art and design and performing arts, to look at people with a background in science, in marketing, in entrepreneurship, in anything that involves making changes in the world and taking responsibility for those changes. A few months ago, I was at a course on interviewing for course leaders, and I was in a breakout session with another course leader. We were talking about our interview strategy, and he said, what are you looking for in MA Applied Imagination? Which I suppose you're looking for creativity in the candidates.
Yeah.
And I thought a bit, and I thought, actually no, because I believe everyone is creative.
Yeah.
You just need to access it. It's a given, especially people that would want to apply for our course. And I thought about it, and I thought actually the quality I'm really trying to find in people when I interview them is courage.
Interesting.
Because that to me is what makes the difference between people who just want to talk about creative things or social issues or issues in technology and the changing world of art and design, or write essays, write dissertations about them, or people who actually are prepared to do something and take action in the real world.
Yeah.
And it's about courage. A famous poet once said, more people fail in the creative arts through lack of character than lack of talent. I wouldn't use the word character myself, but I know what that person was getting at. There comes a point on Applied Imagination, as Kim you know very well, where the talk has to end, the imagination has to end, and the application has to begin, the action in the real world. We require it. It's not an option not to do it. And that takes courage. It's a difficult step, because if you've grown up all your life thinking of yourself as a student, and that learning means being a receiver of knowledge, and then your course leader and the team are saying, no, we want you to take action and be a change maker in the outside world, that is actually a massive change in the way that you see yourself relating to the entire environment and society in which you operate. And it takes bravery, courage to make that switch and see that you are someone who has just as much agency potentially as any other human being in the world.
Yeah, which brings me on to the UAL Creative Attributes Framework, which I found very interesting, and it does run alongside nearly all of the courses here. But how do you think your perception of that fitting in with Applied Imagination has come around?
Well, qualities like agility and resilience, we've already in a way touched on when I was talking about the need for courage. If you're going to test your work in the outside community amongst the stakeholders that your research question actually impacts on, and that's what we require our students to do, you're going to need agility in order to find a way of making your research question real in what we call on the course an intervention. That's a very difficult thing to do, to find a way of making your question real so that people can actually respond to it in an embodied way, so that rather than just talking about your ideas, they have an experience of what they mean and give you much more strong and meaningful feedback that comes from their actions. You're going to need resilience as well in order to do that, because again, some students with the sort of old model or the traditional model of education wired in their head still see this thing we call the intervention as some kind of degree show extravaganza, some great gesture that they will arrive at the end of the journey, rather than as a research mechanism to give them the knowledge they will need to actually make the journey. Again, that's tied to resilience and what I was calling courage, because in order to turn that kind of intervention into a research mechanism, you have to do what I was talking about earlier. You have to change the way in which you allow yourself to have agency in the world and become more than just a passive student. So again, communicating and networking is also an essential part of being able to access the people that your idea affects. I mean, a classic example from a few years ago on the course would be someone from the Lebanon who was doing a project on plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery in her home country, which apparently where they spend more than any other country per head in the world on cosmetic surgery. Perhaps because of its position sort of impinged between Europe and the Middle East, I don't know. Anyway, she got all of this praise for the project. She got an outstanding degree, a lot of press attention in the UK and also back home in Beirut. But I asked her, well, Gwen, what's the best thing that's come out of this project for you? And she said, 3 of my friends back home who were thinking about having cosmetic surgery, now having participated in my research project, are thinking again about it, and perhaps they don't need it. you can look at that as success, and you can also see that as a massive responsibility of actually having made a change, not forced anyone else to change the way they behave, but brought them to a point of realization where they perhaps were able to think about what they were doing and wonder whether they could make a different decision. The impact of what you're doing. And once we leave university and we enter the professional world, we're going to be needing to have impact in everything that we do, whether we work independently as freelancers or as entrepreneurs, or whether we're part of a large organisation. You are always going to be measured not by how clever your ideas are, but by the impact that they have.
So looking forward now to really the opportunities available to the current UAL students or those who might be interested in approaching you to apply for the course, but also considering staff members who might be interested in applying for the course. How do you think that these staff members would benefit from undertaking such a course? And then the second part of that question is, how do you think that will impact on the growth of their role within the institution?
Just while you're speaking, Kim, I'm starting to scribble down on a piece of paper.
That's fine.
The recent graduates from the course who are now working in different ways within UAL, and there's so many of them recently that
Which
I
I'm
might
very
even
happy
mention.
to see. Even from I must say, as you're writing, but I must say, even from our course, which our course was 2017 to 18, and we have quite a few from our course that I was very happy to see, and we've gone in and we've developed ourselves within UAL in our roles, and that has very much had an intuitive connection to our research too, which is very interesting.
So just in the last couple of years, think of the students in the course. There's yourself working here at LCC, and Julie Wright working up at High Holborn. Got Joanna Norton, recent graduate from the part-time mode, working in the language service. We've got Henrika Lang, graduate from only last year, working in the library at CSM. We've got Mike Hankin, recent graduate from last year, has become a stage leader on BA product design. And just very, very recently, and I'm so chuffed about this, Suzanne Harris, who's even a current student on part-time, has been appointed the new fashion pathway leader for Fashion Foundation at CSM.
That's brilliant.
So they're busting out all over. And if I were to I don't take any credit for that, the credit all belongs to them. But I think one of the things they might have learned on the course is how to position what they're doing in relation to a body of stakeholders around them. I remember a little longer ago, a guy who was still very much in touch with the course, Ralph Barker, won one of 3 places out of 2,000 applications to get a fast track young executive post at HarperCollins, the publishers. And he absolutely came back and said to me the things he learned on the course about how to present and how to make an issue real, in other words, make his own ideas for HarperCollins look real in the interview, or what had got him through, because he'd approached presenting himself almost from the other perspective, thinking about what change he could make in this organisation and what he could do, rather than a more passive, look at me, I've got all these qualities, but I don't quite know how you use them kind of approach. And I think these students, because the experience they've had of articulating and testing and developing a project in the external world, find the selection interviewing process very amenable to them, because they see it in a subtly different way. Am I making any sense?
It does, it does make sense. I think it's really great for people to know about the success stories too, and it might be interesting going forward to get some of these people on.
What an awesome idea.
That's a really good idea.
That's a really good idea, get them podcasting about how they've got where they are.
I think that's really great, because it's one of the last part-time MAs.
It's the only part-time masters in UAL.
There we
so
are.
If you want to gain a master's while you're working on our part-time mode, and also learn an enormous amount about yourself and research methodologies and your chosen area of subject, come and join us. 180 days left to apply for next year's course.
There you have it. 180 days left. You can find all of the information on the UAL website. So get cracking if you're interested and send over some details, and I'm sure we will post the link as well.
See you in January.
So see you then, and thanks Richard for coming on.
Thank you, Kim, for interviewing me.
Thanks very much. Bye. I have been Kimberly Artist, and this podcast was brought to you by Conscious Cosmos, a social enterprise working for the betterment of the creative industries. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Conscious Cos. Please leave your comments below. Please keep your eyes and ears open for the next instalment of Grey Matters. Thank you for listening.